It will be mailed to the applicant and the U.S. mail to the neighbor and the community and the interested parties. If an applicant's request is approved, the applicant should contact the Charleston County Zoning and Planning Department staff to discuss the next steps of the process. A variance and a special exception granted this evening are valid for 12 months after the meeting. A 1-year extension may be granted only if construction or development has been commenced or has been diligently pursued. However, if an applicant request is disapproved and an applicant wishes to appeal the decision of this board concerning the case, the appeal must be addressed in circuit court. South Carolina Code 6-29-820 states that the appeal must be filed by the applicant within 30 days of the decision of this board, and that it is mailed to them. Failure to file an appeal within this time limit deprives the court of its jurisdiction to hear this matter. Because this is a quasi-judicial body, everything said in this meeting must be complete, true, and accurate. All the information provided to the BZA is considered evidence, and the board may certify contempt of court if a false statement is made either in writing or orally. Each person who wishes to address the board will be sworn in by the BZA secretary prior to the testimony or the evidence provided. Next slide, please. I will now call each case by case number, and staff will present facts that are pertinent to each case, limited to 5 minutes. I will then call the applicant. The applicant will state his or her name and current address for the record before presenting testimony pertinent to the case, limited to 5 minutes. I would then ask for those speaking in support or in opposition to the case, and they will also follow the same procedure for identifying themselves and are limited to 2 minutes each. The applicant will then have a chance to reply in opposition, limited to 2 minutes. And then the BZA will make a motion to close the case to the public. Finally, the BZA will make a motion concerning the application, stating the specific facts of finding and the conclusion of law. Tonight, we will hear 6 new cases to the public. Next slide, please. Our first case will be presented by Mr. Joshua Downing. It will be case BZA 11-20-00433. Mr. Downing.
BZA case 11-20-00433. The applicant and property owner, Robert L. Howard, is requesting a special exception to establish a short-term rental, extended home rental in the single-family R4 residential zoning district at 3 Penn Avenue, TMS number 418-1500090 in the St. Andrews area of Charleston County. The 0.32 acre subject property and the properties to the southeast are located in the R4 zoning district. The properties to the north, east, and west are located in the city of Charleston's jurisdiction. The property contains a 1,217 square foot home with 3 bedrooms that was constructed in 1957 per Charleston County records. The Board of Zoning Appeals may approve with conditions, or deny BZA case 11-20-00433 special exception to establish a short-term rental, extended home rental in the single-family R4 residential zoning district at 3 Penn Avenue, TMS number 418-1500090 in the St. Andrews area of Charleston County, based on the BZA's fact finding, unless additional information is deemed necessary to make an informed decision. In the event that the board decides to approve the application, the board should consider the following conditions recommended by staff. Number 1, prior to the zoning permit's approval, The applicant shall complete the full site plan review process. Number 2, the use shall comply with all requirements of Article 6.8. Number 3, the property shall not be used as a short-term rental for more than 144 days in the aggregate calendar year. And number 4, the property owner shall be responsible for ensuring that the tenants comply with the Charleston County noise ordinance. Site plan, plat, and any questions of staff?
Does anyone have a question of staff? Thank you, Mr. Downey.
Thank you.
Ms. Working, is the applicant available?
Yes, and I just promoted him, Mr. Robert Lake Howard.
Mr. Howard?
Yes, sorry. Hi there.
Good. Thank you for coming tonight. Please state your name and your address and tell this board why we should approve your application, sir.
Sure, yeah, my name is Robert Lake Howard. My current residence is 668 Cedar Point Drive, Charleston, South Carolina, 29412.
Okay, before we start, please, I want to get the secretary to swear you in, please.
Okay. Please raise your right hand. I will say the oath and you will say I do. I swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Please go ahead, Mr. Howard. Tell us why we should approve your application, sir.
Sure, yeah, the property address is 3 Penn Ave, Charleston, 29407 in West Ashley. It's very close to commercial district there on St. Andrews Boulevard. It's a small loop off of that road there, so I don't believe that it'll have any negative impact to the neighbors nearby. The house to the right is vacant. The house to the left is sort of a catty corner, and there's 6-foot fences on either side. I think it'll be a good addition to the tourism district there in that part of West Ashley, and I think it'll be a great property.
Okay. Does anyone have a question of Mr. Howard? Any board members have a question of Mr. Howard? Do I see any hands? I see no hands. Mr. Howard, I thank you so very much for your testimony today, and we will be making a determination here shortly. Do we have, Ms. Working, do we have anyone else to speak in support of this application?
No, we do not have anyone to speak in support or in opposition.
Okay.
So we can skip through these slides.
Okay. Very good.
Right here, yes.
All right, so at this time, we're going to close the meeting to the public. This application to the public, excuse me.
Sorry, Jennifer, I accidentally muted you.
Okay. Can you
Sorry
hear
about
me now?
that. Yes.
That's okay. So at this time, does any board member have a question of staff? I don't know if that was heard or not.
We could hear you.
Okay. So this case is closed to the public. At this time, I'd like to entertain any motions to approve or deny this application.
I'll make a motion.
Ms. Allison, the chair recognizes you. Please go ahead.
For case BZA-11-20000433, I'd like to make a motion to approve this exception based on the following criteria. One, that the exception is compatible with existing uses in the vicinity and will not adversely affect the welfare character of the community. Criteria 2, that adequate provision has been made to protect adjacent properties from adverse influence of the proposed use. Criteria 3, that the exception complies with all applicable rules, regulations, laws, and standards of the ordinance. And then I would also like to include the following staff recommendations: that prior to permit approval, the applicant will complete the full site plan review process. Number 2, that the use shall comply with all requirements of Article 6.8. 3, that the property shall not be used for more than 144 days in aggregate during any calendar year as a short-term rental. And number 4, that the property owner shall be responsible for ensuring that tenants comply with the Charleston County Noise Ordinance.
Thank you, Ms. Allison. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Woodall, Chair recognizes you. Very good. So it has been properly moved and seconded. Ms. Working, can you call the roll for a vote, please?
Yes, Mr. Ray,
Aye.
Miss Allison,
Aye.
Mr. Boykin,
Aye.
Mr. Nelson,
Aye.
and Mr. Woodall.
Aye.
That's 5 in favor, so it passes with the 4 conditions.
Very good. Mr. Howard, your application has been approved. Congratulations. Within
Thank
10 business days, you'll get a letter from the staff letting you know the next step in the process.
Great.
Congratulations.
Thanks so much.
Yes, sir.
Have a great night.
Good night, sir. Okay. So the next case tonight will be case BZA 11-20-00434, and that will be presented by Ms. Jenny Workin.
Okay. The applicant and property owner is Leo Daniel O'Neill and Misty Black O'Neill. The property is located at 1538 Hamlin Road in the east area of Charleston County. Tax map number 57700000277. It's located in the Agricultural Preservation AG 10 zoning district. This request is a variance to reduce the required 50-foot front street side setback by 14 feet to 36 feet for a proposed residence. And the next slide shows the requirement in chapter 4 for the 50-foot setback. Next. This is a zoning map showing the AG 10 parcels in green, and then to the north you have S3 parcels. Zoomed in aerial, and zoomed out aerial. And here's a photo of the subject property. As you can see, it's vacant with several trees. And these are the 3 grand trees on the property. The property to the west and to the east. And some photographs of Hamlin Road. And as far as the criteria, we stated it meets 1, 2, 3, 5, and 7. And we stated it may meet 4 and 6. And if you do decide to approve this application, we have 1 condition prior to zoning approval. The applicant shall install tree barricades around the grand trees to be preserved pursuant to section 9.4.4 of the Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations. Because as you can see by the site plan, they're preserving the 2 38-inch oaks in the back, and then of course the big tree in the front. And that is basically the reason for this request. They worked with Sally Brooks, our arborist, and came up with this plan as the best, rather than asking for a variance for a grand tree to move the house forward. And here's the survey, just showing the trees again, and the plat should be next. Plat. And that's all I have. If there's any questions, please let me know.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Working. Do we have any questions of staff? I see no hands. Very good. Ms. Working, is the applicant available?
Yes, I am promoting Misty O'Neill, panelist. And, okay.
Can you see us now?
Hello.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
If you can, please state your full name and address for the record, and then I'll swear you in.
Okay, my name is Misty O'Neill. Current residence is 5565 Chaplain's Landing Road, Hollywood, South Carolina.
Leo Daniel O'Neill, also 5565 Chaplin's Landing Road, Hollywood, South Carolina, 29449.
Okay. And I'll swear both of you in now, but just make sure you speak just one at a time, okay? So please raise your right hand. I will say the oath and you will say I do. I swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. I do.
I do.
Okay,
I
thank
do.
you.
Good afternoon, Mr. and Mrs. O'Neill. Glad to have you here tonight.
Thank
Today.
you.
Good. So we have your application here. Please tell this board why we should approve your application today. We can start with either of you, but just
Okay.
one at a time, please.
Okay. So I think Jenny summarized basically the gist of it. We purchased the property in May of 2020 with the intent of building just our personal residence on the property. We did reach out to Sally Brooks because we were concerned about the two grand oaks, mostly in the center of the property, out of a concern for preserving those. Obviously, they were a big reason that we purchased the property. They're lovely, and we wanted to do everything that we could to preserve them. After she took a look at the trees and the size of them, it was her recommendation that that we either change our plans or request a variance to move the property forward. And just out of an abundance of caution, we thought the best approach would be to move the site forward, and just to be able to keep the rear porch that we've got on there on the site plan. So so hopefully we can move everything forward, avoid impacting those two trees that are basically in the middle of the property, and kind of make it difficult to build in front of them, difficult to build behind them, without impacting the tree to the front of the property as well. So so we worked with Sally to try to get a good way to mitigate any impact that we might have on the trees with the construction, and we want to do everything that we can to stay within that framework.
Okay. Does any board member have a question of Ms. O'Neill? Mr. Borkin, this is normally your your thing here.
Well, I don't have anything, but I certainly support her application. So I don't have anything to ask her. I think she's done a good job in presenting it and furnishing the required information.
Very good. Any other board member have a question of Ms. O'Neill? Thank you, Ms. O'Neill, for the information that you provided to the board.
Thank
Mr.
you.
O'Neill, would you like to make a statement at this time and telling us why we should approve your application, sir?
I would echo basically what my wife has already said, and just in our desire to want to live in this area and be able to utilize the property with being able to keep and enjoy these trees that are there. We'd like to get a variance in order to do that. One of the things was, as she mentioned, the porch on the back, and being able to have a covered porch is important to us to be able to enjoy the outside. And to do that, you need kind of a screened in porch in this area to avoid the flying pests and that sort of thing. So in order to have a covered porch, that was a recommendation we had, was the only way to do that was to get out from under the canopy of those rear grand oaks. So we're hoping to just move forward enough to protect those trees and also keep everything where it is, because they're beautiful. It's a beautiful piece of property, and we'd like to be able to put something on there we can enjoy. And I think that's the best way to do it.
Well, very good, Mr. O'Neill. Does any board member have a question of Mr. O'Neill? Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. O'Neill, for your testimony tonight. Okay. Board, we've heard the evidence. At this time, we'll close. Do we have any questions of staff at this time? Let me ask that first. Board members, do we have any questions of staff? None. Okay, then at this time, I'll close it to the public. And at this time, we'll ask for a motion to approve or deny. Mr. Borkin, I see your hand, sir.
It is my pleasure to make a motion that we approve the variance in BZA case -11-20-00434. I find that it meets all of the criteria based on staff review and the documentation forwarded by the applicant and the testimony given this evening. As to criteria 1, I find that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to this particular piece of property, particularly the grand trees and their location, as they may impact the buildable area of the lot. As to criteria number 2, that these conditions not generally apply to other property in the vicinity, that the location of these trees are certainly not necessarily ordinary, and given the ability of one to build a home on their property, they are restricting it to that degree. And I commend the applicants for seeking a variance to reduce the setback versus asking to remove the trees. As to criteria 3, because of these conditions, the application of this ordinance to this particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of property. I find in this case it does. As to criteria number 4, the authorization of this variance will not be a substantial detriment to the adjacent property or the public good, or the character of the zoning district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance. I think the preservation of those grand trees far outweigh any encroachment or reducing that setback in this case. As to criteria number 5, the Board of Zoning Appeals shall not grant a variance, the effect of which would be to allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted in the zoning district to extend physically a non-conforming use of land or to change the zoning district boundaries shown on the official zoning map. The fact that the property may be utilized more properly should a variance be granted may not be considered on the grounds for this variance. I find it meets criteria 5. Criteria 6, the need of the variance does not result in the applicant's own actions. Clearly, these are grand trees. They've been there for a very, very long time, and I think it's a very reasonable request to offset the restriction that those trees cause to the ability to build on the property. As to criteria number 7, granting of the variance does not substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan or purposes of the ordinance. I think it absolutely fits, no conflict there. And that I would, in my motion, include staff's recommendation of the condition prior to zoning approval, the applicant shall install the tree barricades around the grand trees to be preserved pursuant to section 9.4.4 of the Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations.
Thank you, Mr. Borkin.
Yes.
Would anybody, do we have a second for this motion?
Second.
Mr. Nelson, I see your hand. Thank you. Ms. Working, would you please call the roll
Okay.
for the vote?
Mr. Ray,
Aye.
Miss Allison,
Aye.
Mr. Boykin,
Aye.
Mr. Nelson,
Aye.
and Mr. Woodall.
Aye.
Okay, it passes unanimous, all 5, with the 1 condition.
Very good. I see the smile on your face, Miss O'Neill. So I see that you're quite happy. Congratulations to both of you. Within 10 business days, you'll get notification from the staff letting you know the next step in the process. Welcome to Mount Pleasant too. It's a beautiful place. You don't have to worry about the mosquitoes. We love our mosquitoes here too. Everything in Mount Pleasant is beautiful. So don't worry about it too bad with that screened-in porch. But once again, congratulations. Thank you. All right, our next case. Our next case is case BZA-11-20-00-436. And that will be done by Miss Jenny Working once again.
Okay. The applicant and property owner is John P. Nee Jr. The property is located at 228 Riverland Drive on James Island. The tax map number is 343-06-00126, and the zoning is single-family residential R4 zoning district. This request is a variance to reduce the required 3-foot interior side setback by 2.9 feet to 0.1 for an accessory structure of the existing greenhouse. The requirements are that this is on a corner lot, so they have 2 front street side setbacks, and detached structures can be 3 feet from the interior side, but the greenhouse is 0.9 feet from the interior side. Next slide. And these are just the requirements for the ordinance. Next. The zoning map shows it R4 on the corner of Riverland and Edisto Avenue, and all the surrounding zoning is R4. The zoomed in aerial, you can see, I guess that would be west, the greenhouse, and that dojo. Next, and then the zoomed out aerial. This is a photo of the greenhouse, and you can see it's close to the property line. But I believe the wooden fence is the neighboring fence. Next, and some more pictures of the greenhouse. This is the Bamboo buffer along Edisto Avenue, and then the picture on the right is the property it's adjacent to, 2184 Edisto Avenue. And some more pictures of the front and the back of the subject property. Regarding the 7 criteria, this one meets all 7 criteria. I don't have a lot more to say about it. I can answer questions, but we don't have any conditions for this one. This is a site plan, shows you, again, they have a gazebo back there that meets the setbacks, and then the greenhouse. Needs a variance, and then the survey. And the next slide is the plat of the neighborhood. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Does the board have any questions for Ms. Working or staff? Okay, I see none. Ms. Working, would you please call the applicant and see if the applicant's available, please?
Yes. Okay, there they are, and that's Mr. and Mrs. Me. Okay, so if you can please state your full name and address for the record, and then I'll swear you in.
Yes, my name is John Breedney Jr. at 228 Riverland Drive, Charleston, South Carolina, 29412.
Okay.
And this is my wife,
Okay.
Sheila Seaman. I let you go.
I'm Sheila Seaman. I'm John's wife. I live at 228 Riverland Drive, Charleston, South Carolina, 29412.
Okay, and I'll swear both of you in. Please raise your right hand. I will say the oath and you will say I do. I swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth I do.
I can.
Good afternoon,
Thank you.
Mr. and Mrs. Nee. My name is William Ray. Please tell this board why we should approve your application today. Just one of you at a time, please, if you didn't mind.
Okay. Well, so thank you very much for considering our application. We're a retired couple. We're avid gardeners. Over the years, we have accumulated a lot of tropical and semi-tropical plants that have grown the way things grow. And over the years, we've gotten so I can't move them around as easily as I was once able to. And we thought what we really needed was a good central location where we could put these plants during the cold winter months and keep them so that we could bring them back in the spring better than ever. And we were certainly happy to have it over Christmas.
Okay. Does any board member have a question of Mr. Nee, Mr. John Nee Jr.? No? Thank you. Ma'am, it's your turn. Would you like to tell this board why we should approve your application?
Well, it's very cold outside. Not so much recently, but we had that big cold snap. And we lost a lot of, the annuals and things. But we really are plant collectors, and we stand to lose a lot of things if we can't protect them. And that's the one location on the entire property where the sun rises and warms the greenhouse of first beams of the sun. And we'd rather not run electricity or use propane because of a hazard. So this is the best location. It's also the best location visually to tuck it away from the street, because if any other location would be probably more visible. So it's sort of tucked away, it's getting the sun, it's keeping our plants alive. And we really appreciate your consideration of our application. It's heartfelt.
Very good. Does any board member have a question of this couple? Ms. Nee, anyone? I have a question for you.
Mhm.
Please tell me, what type of plants do you have in your greenhouse that you're really trying to protect?
Well, we have a very frangipani, which is a Hawaiian tropical. It's an anchor plant. We have a jatropha, which we've nicknamed Big Red, and he's very popular with the pollinators and the hummingbird. He's the most popular plant in the entire garden, and he's approaching about 5 feet. We have a number of ferns because we have a fern garden, and they really make this soft, beautiful face right outside our porch, which we really enjoy. And
we have a Japanese hibiscus, which is a very fascinating plant that doesn't like to be below 40 degrees.
And a number of other, I could go on, but a lot of these plants are large anchor plants that anchor the patio and the fern garden and things like that. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Morgan has a question for you.
Well, more of a comment. I can absolutely sympathize with y'all's situation. We live not far from you, and I've hauled my wife's bougainvilleas in and out of our greenhouse numerous times, and she was eating her heart out all the way back from the Keys that we're making our trip over Christmas. So totally understand where you're coming from, and I think it's a grand project. Thank you.
We have an orphan bougainvillea. If you need it, it's not very happy.
They are temperamental.
They are.
Thank you, folks. Any other questions? Thank you so very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Very good. Ms. Workin, do we have anyone else to speak in support or opposition? Oh, I left. Ms. Workin, do we have anyone else to speak in support or
No,
opposition?
we don't have any other speakers for this case.
Okay. Does anyone have any question for the staff? Any board member have any questions for the staff? Very good. So at this time, I'll close it to the public. And at this time, I'd like to get a motion and a second to either approve or deny this application. Right at the bat there, Mr. Morgan, please.
Well, I certainly wasn't trying to hog up all the motions tonight, but absolutely, I'll be happy to go forward and make a motion that we grant the variance in BZA case BZA-11-20-00435. I find, based upon staff's review and report and the testimony of the applicants, that all 7 of the criteria are in fact met. That criteria 1, there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to this particular piece of property. The utilization of this structure is in a place where it can best be employed without any ill effects from neighbors having to see it. So it meets criteria 1. Criteria 2, these conditions not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. The shape of the lot, position of the house, and where this particular structure would best be suited, I think contributes to most of this. And so I don't see any issues with that. Criteria 3, because of these conditions, the application of this ordinance to this particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of property. I think that a greenhouse is something that's very common in low country, and certainly understand the challenges of keeping plants over the winter, and property such as this that has limited sunlight would make it difficult to do that, other than granting this variance to allow them to put the structure in that particular place on their property. And I don't think it's an unreasonable request to reduce the 3-foot setback to accommodate that. Criteria 4, the authorization of the variance will not be a substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good, or the character of zoning district will not be harmed by granting variance. I find that it meets that criteria. Criteria 5, the Board of Zoning Appeals should not grant a variance, the effect of which would be to allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted in the zoning district to extend physically a non-conforming use of land or to change the zoning district boundaries shown on the official zoning map. The fact the property may be utilized more profitably should be a variance be granted, should not be considered for grounds of the variance. I find that it meets criteria 5. Criteria 6, the need for the variance does not result in applicant's own actions. The greenhouse can only, I guess, be used where there's sunlight, unless you use artificial lighting. I don't think that's an unreasonable situation. I think the applicants found themselves in a position that they needed to put the greenhouse where it was, but to be able to utilize the greenhouse. So I find it meets criteria 6. Criteria 7, the granting of variance does not substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan or purpose of the ordinance. I find that it meets criteria 7. Staff has made no request or recommendation for any conditions, so therefore none will be included.
Thank you, Mr. Borkin, for your motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Woodall, the chair recognizes you. Ms. Working, would you please call the roll for the vote?
Okay. Mr. Ray,
Aye.
Miss Allison,
Aye.
Mr. Boykin,
Aye.
Mr. Nelson,
Aye.
and Mr. Woodall.
Aye.
It's unanimous approval with 5 votes.
Congratulations on having your application approved. Within 10 working days or business days, you will have information be sent to you from the staff, letting you know the next steps in the process. Once again, congratulations on getting your application approved.
Thank you
Thank you
so
very
much.
much for your
Thank you,
time.
all of you.
Very good. Good night.
Good night.
Since I made an error last time, let me see if I can get it right this time. So the next case that we have available tonight will be case BZA 11-20-00436. And that will be done by Mr. Josh Downing.
All right, BZA case 11-20-00436. The applicant and property owner, Mr. Michael Ward and Stephen Ward, are requesting a special exception to establish an extended home rental, short-term rental in the Doo-Wop-Wapu overlay zoning district in the single-family R4 zoning district at 1917 Second Drive, TMS number 3500500015 in the St. Andrews area of Charleston County. The 0.34 acre subject property and all surrounding properties are located in the Doo-Wop-Wapu area overlay zoning district, single family R4 residential zoning district. The property contains a 1,700 square foot home that was constructed in 1955 and a 350 square foot accessory dwelling unit that was constructed in 1995 per Charleston County records. Staff conducted a site visit on December the 9th, and the board may approve with conditions, or deny BZA case 11-20-00436, special exception to establish a extended home rental in the Doo-Wop-Wapu overlay zoning district in the single family residential R4 zoning district at 1917 Second Drive, TMS number 3500500015 in the St. Andrews area of Charleston County, based on the BZA's fact finding, unless additional information is deemed necessary to make an informed decision. In the event that the board decides to approve this application, the board should consider the following conditions recommended by staff. Prior to the permit's approval, the applicant shall complete the limited site plan review process. The use shall comply with all requirements of Article 6.8. The property shall not be used for more than 144 days in the aggregate during the calendar year. And number 4, the property owner shall be responsible for ensuring that the tenants comply with the Charleston County noise ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Downey.
Thank you.
Does any board member have a question of Mr. Downey? No? Ms. Workin, is the applicant available?
Yes. Sorry.
Would-
I'm just trying to get him to unmute, and sometimes I unmute the wrong person. But hello. Oh, okay, I see you. Michael, if you can please state your full name and current address for the record, and then I'll swear you in. Michael, Mr. Ward, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Can you please state your full name and current address for the record?
Yes, it's Michael Ward, 1917 Second Drive, Charleston, South Carolina, 29407.
Okay. And please raise your right hand. I will say the oath and you will say I do. I swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. I do.
I do.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Ward, good afternoon, sir.
Hello. I was trying to get the video to work, but it turns out my technical capabilities are lacking right now. So unless it is on and y'all just see the side of my ear, I'm not really sure yet.
We see absolutely nothing, sir.
Well, good. Well, that's probably a good thing. Y'all don't want to look at my mug today anyways.
Okay. Well, Mr. Ward, my name is William Ray, and we have the board here. Please tell us why we should approve your application, sir.
Yes. So, you know, my letter of intent talked about I'm not new, especially new to this process. Last year we had a variance request for setback to change our setback from 15 to 5 feet to convert this outdoor storage garage building into an accessory dwelling unit. And that was approved, and we finally got all of our permits in place and had a general contractor convert this space starting in January of 2020. Got it completed right around March 2020. And, you know, the original intent was mainly for my in-laws. They live in Canada, and they're semi-retired, so they're able to come down for a month or 2 months at a time. So it behooved us to have a separate space for my sanity and their sanity. So that was the original intent of getting the accessory dwelling unit up and running. And then, like I said, March 2020 hit, and it was, you know, I think we all know what hit March 2020. And they weren't able to travel here. You know, they had a lot of travel restrictions, and we hit some economic situations personally here at the house, and so we decided to start renting it. And so we have the short-term rental permit for a limited short-term rental permit for up to 72 days, and it's been great, and it's really helped us out a lot. And we still need that help. And so, you know, I spoke with Josh with Charleston County, and he's really walked me through a lot, as well as Jennifer. And so we're here today to get the extended home rental to up it to 144 days. It would really help us out. And you know, we live in a great neighborhood, and you know, the space is 350 square feet, so it's not going to affect the surrounding area at all. We get no more than 2 people at a time, usually couples or professionals that are staying at the short-term rental. So it's been a blessing to us, and I don't think it's going to affect the neighborhood at all. So we're hoping that we can get this special exception approved.
Very good. Thank you for your testimony. Hold
Thank you.
tight. Does anyone have a question of Mr. Ward? Mr. Ward, I got a question for you.
All right.
Have you had an opportunity to talk with your neighbors about your project that you're undergoing, about having guests coming in?
Yeah, so my directly adjacent neighbor, I've spoke with them about it, what's going on. And we, like I said, we've been doing it. You know, we've had the permit for the 72-day max, so they understand what's going on. And my directly adjacent neighbor I've spoke to about the extension, and it hasn't been an issue. It's been like I said, it's been no more than either couples or professionals there. You know, what I said was the last thing I want to do is rent to 25-year-old me bringing a bachelor party in. And the good news is there's a 2-person maximum. So you're not getting 25-year-old me with a group of guys for a bachelor party. So it's a good deal.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Ward. Does anybody else have any questions of Mr. Ward? All right, I see none. All right, we had someone else too that would like Mr. Stephen Ward. Is he available? Ms. Working.
It's Stevie. It's
Stevie.
my wife. like Stevie Nicks.
Jinx.
Yeah,
I was like, I
yeah.
think it's
It's
a lady.
okay. You know, it's not the first time she'd heard it. If you'd like for her to speak, I can go inside and grab her. You know, I'll put her on the applicant because she is obviously an owner of this property as well. But she is dealing with 2 kids between 2 and 4.
No worries, no worries.
But I can get her in here to talk if you'd like. If that's a legal issue, I can definitely get her in here.
No, we just afforded you that opportunity. Your testimony should be enough, I would think. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay.
Very good. All right. Does anyone have any other questions? Okay. At this time, any other questions for staff? So at this time, hearing none, I close this to the public. Do we have any board member that would like to make a motion? And if possible, can we also a motion to approve or deny? And with that, a second. Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, I'll make the motion. In the case of BZA 11-20-00436, I motion that we approve the applicant's application for a special exception to the STRPS. Find that 1, it is compatible with existing uses in the vicinity and will not adversely affect the general welfare or character of the immediate community. It's certainly helpful that he's already renting the property. So continuation of that without any objection over the neighbor certainly seems reasonable. Adequate provision is made and or exists for such items as setbacks, buffering to protect adjacent properties from possible adverse influence of proposed STRP use, such as noise, traffic congestion, trash, parking, and similar factors. I think the applicant has done a very good job of stating reasons of how they're reducing any impact to neighbors. And this application complies with all applicable rules, regulations, laws, and standards of this ordinance, including but not limited to any use conditions, zoning district standards, and applicable STRP site plan review requirements of this ordinance. In approving this particular application, I would like to add the 4 conditions as requested by staff. 1, prior to zoning permit approval, the applicant shall complete the STRP limited site plan review process. 2, the use shall comply with all requirements of Article 6.8. 3, the property shall not be used as a short-term rental for more than 144 days in aggregate during any calendar year. And 4, the property owner shall be responsible for ensuring that tenants comply with the Charleston County noise ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Do we have a second? I'll second it. How about that? All right, so we have an application that has been properly moved and second. Ms. Working, would you please call the roll?
Okay.
Vote.
Mr. Ray?
Aye.
Miss Allison?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Nelson?
Aye.
Mr. Woodall?
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous approval with the 4 conditions.
Thank you, Ms. Working. Mr. Ward. Mr. Ward.
He's still
Please
there.
unmute.
He's still here. He's just muted.
Oh,
I asked
okay.
him to
Well,
unmute.
congratulations. Within the next 10 business days, you'll get some information from the staff letting you know the next step in the process. Once again, congratulations. Okay. The next case that we have, there he is. I can see his face now. Congratulations, sir.
And there he goes. I just sent him.
Absolutely.
He heard you.
Very good. So our next case that we have, staff and board members, is case BZA 11-20-00437. And that one will be done by Mr. Joshua Downey.
BZA case 11-20-00437. The applicant and property owner Russ Ellington and Michael McGlan are requesting they establish a short-term rental, extended home rental in the single-family residential R4 zoning district at 2076 Clayton Street, TMS number 31012000087 in the St. Andrews area of Charleston County. The 0.26 acre subject property and properties to the south, east, and west are located in the single-family R4 zoning district. The properties to the north are located in the city of Charleston's jurisdiction. The property contains a 1,632 square foot home that was with 4 bedrooms that was constructed in 1998 for Charleston County records. Staff did conduct a site visit on December the 9th. The board may approve with conditions or deny BZA case 11-20-00437 special exception to establish a short-term rental, extended home rental in the single-family R4 residential zoning district at 2076 Clayton Street, TMS number 310120087 in the St. Andrews area of Charleston County based on the BZA's fact finding unless additional information is deemed necessary to make an informed decision. In the event that the board decides to approve the application, the board should consider the following recommendations by staff. Number one, prior to the zoning permits approval, the applicant shall complete the full site plan review process. Number two, the use shall comply with all articles of Article 6.8. Number three, the property shall not be used for more than 144 days in aggregate during the calendar year. And number four, the property owner shall be responsible for ensuring that the tenants can comply with the Charleston County noise ordinance.
All right, thank you, Mr. Downey. Do we have any questions of Mr. Downey? No? Very good. Ms. Working, is the applicant available, please?
Yes, I'm going to promote them to panelists right now. And I asked him to unmute. There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, if you can please state your full name and address for the record, and then I'll swear you in.
Okay. Full name's Russ Ellington. My current address is 27 Lake of Isles Road in Preston, Connecticut, 0665.
Please raise your right hand. I will say the oath and you will say I do. I swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Elton. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for taking part of this meeting, sir.
Thank you for having me.
My name is William Ray, and I'm the chairperson here for the Charleston County Board of Zoning Appeals. Please tell this board why we should approve your application, sir.
Well, Charleston is kind of like a second home to me and my business partner, Mike Klang. We bought the house together in March of 2020. I own a commercial building flood protection company, National Flood Protection, and we have been working in the Charleston area for almost 4 years now. So a lot of the larger commercial projects that are happening down on Meeting Street and Hugie Street and Morrison Yards and some of those big projects we've been a part of. So what we decided to do, since we're down here that often for work, is to buy a house, because typically we would short-term rental something when we came down, and it just made sense to the frequency that we're down here to actually, buy a house that, when the crew comes down to work this is where we stay. And we're down here for, it's been going up every year, but we're typically 12 to 16, and this coming year, probably close to 20 weeks that we'll be down here working. So our intent is to hopefully be able to, when we're not here, is to short-term rental it to help offset the cost of, the mortgage and maintaining the property. We're very close to Highway 17 with the restaurants and hotels. I think we're just about a quarter of a mile. So, I mean, for us, to be able to do that and have other people come enjoy Charleston the way we enjoy it is one of the aspects of this. And I mean, we've got a 6-foot fenced-in backyard. If you notice by the picture, I mean, we've got a lawn company that maintains the lawn when we're not here. I mean, we're very, neat people. I mean, when nothing's a mess, we have designated garbage areas for the trash. And so we just, we're hoping that you guys approve us, for the reasons as stated. I don't think a short-term rental here where we are will have any adverse effect on the neighboring houses. We've talked to the neighbors on both sides of us. In fact, the one lady on one side of us, we text her when we're not going to be there. She gets our mail for us. She keeps an eye on the place. So we feel invested in Charleston. I mean, we're from up north, but to be honest, I'd rather be down here. So I come down as often as I can when we have work. And that's pretty much it.
Very good, Mr. Ellington. Does any board member have a question of Mr. Ellington? Well, I do. Mr. Ellington, is this your first short-term rental that you're operating?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, very good. And you gave a little plug to the name of your company. What was it again?
National Flood Protection.
National Flood Protection. And you have a management company that's going to be working with you to
Yes.
do the short-term rentals, not
Yes,
just somebody cutting your grass? So.
No, we have a full management company that basically takes, because we're not going to be here, because we're so, we're not local, they handle everything. It's called iTrips. And so they handle, all of the cleaning aspect of it and the linen changeovers and the bookings and all that, all the stuff that, needs to happen.
Okay, very good. Well, I hope that you can have some more time here in our beautiful city and our beautiful county of Charleston and maybe do some more business here. Very good.
Makes two of us.
Very good. Mr. Woodall has a question for you.
Sure.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Ellington. Just a quick question. Will that management company be handling, like, if there's any noise ordinance the tenants don't comply with, would they be your contact?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and as I stated, we kind of have a set of eyes and ears next door. We've got a good relationship with our neighbor next door. So she knows what we're trying to do, and she's, she, like I say, will kind of help keep an eye on the place as well.
Very good. Does anyone else have a question of Mr. Ellington? Thank you, Mr. Ellington. Now,
Thank you.
Would your co-owner, the other partner, would he like to speak at this time too? No? Yes?
No, we're good.
Okay. Very good. Thank you so very much. Does any board member have a question of staff? I see no hands. So thank you. So at this time, I'll close the meeting and this application, not the meeting, but this application to the public. And at this time, will the board entertain a motion?
Mr. Ray, this is the case that we received the letter via mail, U.S. postal mail. So yeah. It was postmarked the 28th of December, but we got it today at 3. So that's why no one has a copy of it. But I'm going to go ahead and read it into the record. And then if Mr. Ellington wanted to respond to it, he can in the rebuttal. It's from David and Christina Liao, Liao. They're at 2064 Clayton Drive. They say they're against this case. The main reasons are as following. 1, the Clayton Drive is a single resident neighborhood, should not mix up with apartment or inn type of operation. 2, it impacts the security of the Clayton Drive neighborhood. 3, it jeopardizes the nearby school children studying and their safety. 4, the home value of Clayton Drive area will be depreciated, and 5, the traffic of this area will be greatly impacted. And that's their letter. And again, I apologize we weren't able to get that out, but due to the holidays and the U.S. Postal Mail, that's that.
Thank you, Ms. Working. So, Mr. Ellington,
Yes.
what we have here, you have opposition. So you have an opportunity to respond to that, and we'll give you a minute or two to respond to that, okay?
Sure. Well, I guess my response would be, as far as the traffic, like I say, we're down here enough. If the house was not a short-term rental, was occupied by the previous owners of the house, who we got to know a little bit before we closed. I mean, they had 2 vehicles and a boat that was on the property, so I don't see how that impacts traffic. Whether somebody's, in fact, I would say that traffic might even be a little bit less, because for the weeks that the house isn't rented, there's going to be 0 traffic impact created by this. As far as safety of the children, there is a school right down the street. But again, I don't think having people, to me, Charleston, like I said, with what our company does, we've been in a lot of different cities across the country. Charleston is one that I think people come to because they enjoy it, and they're here for the scenery, the tourism, the food. I don't see this as being, anything that could be of ill with people, trying to rent this place to come do any ill will towards anybody here. I don't think you go on vacation for 3 or 4 days or a week to go wreak havoc on a neighborhood. I think you go to enjoy the city that you're going to. And I think especially Charleston, given its, its allure, so to speak, that I don't see that as being an issue. Like I say, we maintain the property. We have a property management company. I mean, there's going to be eyes on here all the time that there's somebody here, and it's 144 days maximum. I mean, we're here as the homeowners probably more than the 144 days. So I just don't see how that would really have a negative impact on the surrounding houses and the community as a whole.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Ellington. Any other questions of staff about the comments that he made? Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Working, for bringing that to my attention. I appreciate that. So at this time, we'll close this application to the public. And at this time, we'd like to hear a motion to either approve or deny this application. Do we have anybody that would like to make a motion? Mr. Woodall.
In the special exceptions, BZA 112000437, I move that we grant the special, that it is compatible with the in the vicinity and would not adversely affect the welfare and characteristics of the immediate area. Number 2, adequate provisions for the setbacks and buffering, fencing and landscaping, as well as to prevent traffic congestion. Made a very good point. The time that he's not going to be there, that there's not going to be anyone parking there. And then number 3, complies with adequate rules. It does comply with the adequate rules or laws, standard of the ordinance, and that they will complete the full site plan review process to ensure the property complies with applicable requirements in the ordinance. I would also include the 4 and the 4th one was one that I was concerned with, but Mr. Ellington addressed it with me. Prior to zoning permit approval, for applicant shall complete the STRP full site plan review. As already stated, the use shall comply with all requirements. In 6.8, the property shall not be used for short-term rental for more than 144 days in aggregate during the calendar year. And number 4, the property owner shall be responsible for ensuring the tenants comply with the Charleston County ordinance.
Do we have a second? Mr. Borkin.
Yes, sir.
Did you raise your hand? I did. It seemed like
I did.
I can't catch it. Okay. Very good. Ms. Working, would you please call for the vote?
Okay. Mr. Ray?
Aye.
Miss Allison?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Nelson?
Aye.
And Mr. Woodall?
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous, 5 votes in favor with the 4 conditions.
Congratulations, Mr. Elton. Your application was approved. Within 10 business days, one member of the staff will contact you, give you something in writing, and let you know the next step in this process. Once again, congratulations.
Thank you. Can I say one quick thing?
Please.
I just want to thank Jenny, especially because she's been a huge help back, obviously being out of town and never having done this before. She and everybody else at zoning, when we did the site plan review and whatnot, has just been phenomenal to work with, and I and Mike generally appreciate it. So I just wanted to take the time to thank everyone involved.
Thank you so very much. You can tell she appreciates that comment by that beautiful smile she has on. So that's great. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our next case, our final case for tonight, will be case BZA 11-20-00438, and that will be done by Ms. Working.
Okay. The applicant for this case is Ralph Massenberg III. He is represented by Joe Irvin of C. Baker Engineering, LLC. The property is located at 3527 Kitford Road on Johns Island, and that's TMS number 283-0000491. It is located in the Industrial Zoning District. The variance request is to reduce the required 50-foot front street side setback measured from the ingress-egress easement for a proposed building and 2 existing buildings. The requirement here is Chapter 3 written interpretation. On November 13th, the planning director interpreted, in quotes, the term street shall include ingress-egress easements dedicated for vehicular use, end quote. So that has always been how we've done the measurements, but we were asked to write that interpretation since it's not very clear in the ordinance, but we'll be sure to make that clear in the next rewrite. And then we have some definitions here of street, and then Chapter 4 is where the 50-foot is required. Next, that's the written interpretation and the definition, and the Chapter 4 section. So as you can see, it's purple industrial, surrounding zoning, and the brownish yellow is RR3 rural residential. This is a zoomed in aerial of the property and zoomed out aerial. It's off a main road. This is a photograph of the front of the building, existing building. And then this is the general area of where the proposed building is going to be located. And these are the existing buildings. And Kitford Road. Let's see. So regarding the criteria, let's see, make sure I'm on the phone. We stated that it may meet 1, 4, 6, and 7, and that it meets 2, 3, and 5. We did have one condition, or sorry, 2. One is a general condition that the applicant property owner shall complete the site plan review process. 2, prior to zoning permit approval, the applicant property owner shall record a plat that relocates the existing ingress, egress, and that's plat book EH page 922 to the location shown on the site plan exhibit A, which we do have that. I think this is exhibit A, basically their site plan. And it does show, oh, sorry, go back real quick. I'm trying to remember because it's been a while since I've reviewed this, but I believe the blue line is where the 50-foot setback would be. So as you can see, that would go right into all the existing buildings. And next, this is one of their exhibits, exhibit B. And then they had a couple other exhibits in here, and we can always turn back to those if they want to reference them. And next. And this is the plat. So this plat shows where the existing ingress egress easement is. Do you guys have any questions?
Thank you. Oh, yes. Mr. Nelson has a question.
Just one question, Jenny, just for clarification, the ingress egress easement, even though it appears to be a driveway going into the existing property, the staff defines that as a street, which is what leads to the need for the variance?
Right, so based on the plat that I showed you earlier, the true ingress egress is, I believe that's south, is located on the southern property line. So you're correct that it is currently just a drive, but they're wanting to make that a true ingress egress easement. And that's where the 50-foot setback kicks in. But we support this change. I'm just going to make it official by putting it on the plat, so there's no confusion in the future if this variance is granted.
All right, thank you.
Does anyone else have a question on staff? Thank you. Ms. Working, is the applicant available?
Yes.
Or the applicant's representative? All right, we see Mr. Massey. Massenberg, I'm sorry. You only get half of the name here. We didn't see.
Can you unmute Mr. Massenberg? Can you unmute?
Mr. Massenberg, can you unmute?
I also have on his representative as well. I don't know who wants to go first, but.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you now, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Working's gonna swear you in.
Okay, yeah, please, please state your full name and address for the record, and then I'll swear you in.
Ralph E. Massenberg III, 997 Anchor Road, James Island, 29412.
Okay. Please raise your right hand. I will say the oath and you will say I do. I swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hello.
My name is William Ray. This board would like to know, why should we approve your application, sir?
I bought this property about 14 years ago, and we designed it for 3 buildings. I thought the easement was already moved to the center of the property, which is the paved area going back to the tower. And all my buildings are the same dimension off the easement, which there are 2 existing buildings now. We're wanting to add a 3rd up front. So that's why when we found out that the easement was not recorded to where it's being used, we approached this. We didn't know that we had to be 50 feet. 13 or 14 years ago when we built it, there was no questions or problems about it. So that's why we're coming to you asking for the variance to build the 3rd and final building on this property.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Massenberg. Do we have any board member that has a question for the applicant? Thank you, sir, for your testimony. Would your representative like to speak tonight, sir?
I'm assuming he would.
Okay, I see he raised his hand. Mr. Irvin, Ms. Working will swear you in, if you would, at that time, sir.
Okay. Please state your full name and address for the record. I can't hear you. Can you guys hear him? You're unmuted, but can't hear you very well.
Mr. Irvin, how about try that again? We can't hear you.
Yeah, it looks like he's trying to figure it out. Sometimes that happens. He is unmuted though.
Take your time. We're here for you, sir.
Engineer.
I heard that.
I see your mouth moving, Mr. Urban, but we can't hear anything. We still can't hear you, sir. We can see you, but we can't hear you. I wish I knew some sign language. Mr. Urban, if you can hear us, we'll probably give you another minute, please, sir. You unmute it. Try it again.
Did you try to call in? Is that what you're trying to do?
Phone hadn't ring here.
No, he can call into like the webinar, but still be visible.
I do know he's on a phone, not a computer.
Mr. Urban, can you call Mr. Massenberg? And that way we can kind of hear you through that? Oh, okay, you heard us. All right. Mr. Massenberg, we're gonna need you to put your phone on speaker.
Me?
Yes, sir. Mr. Urban will be calling you and we're gonna hear through you.
Okay. All right, Joe.
Yep, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Mr. Urban.
Okay, great, thank you. Sorry about that. All that bad technical equipment, I guess.
Mr. Urban, Ms. Workins gonna swear you in first, please, sir.
All right.
Okay. Yep. Please state your full name and address for the record, and then I'll swear you in.
Joe Urban, P.O. Box 81082, Charleston, South Carolina 29416.
Okay. Please raise your right hand. I will say the oath, and you will say I do. I swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Urban, for coming before us this afternoon. My name is William Ray. Please tell us why we should approve this application, sir. We can't hear you. Mr. Massenberg, put your phone closer to the mic.
Started back in 2004, thereabouts, when this property was subdivided. There's one piece of property not owned by Mr. Massenberg that's behind here. When this property was subdivided in 2005, there was actually an easement down the back of the property that was relocated to the southern property line here. And it was put on the southern property line because there had been no plan, the development plans for this property hadn't been developed yet. This site plan was then developed and submitted to the county for approval in 2006. In that approval, it showed the easement, showed relocating the easement to where we're showing it today, which is the red lines on Exhibit A, which is basically the driveway. For some reason, it didn't get moved at the time, but also at the time, the third building wasn't constructed. So only two buildings were constructed at that time. And Mr. Massenberg moved his operations there, has the two buildings in place, and now we're just trying to complete the originally approved site plan by adding this third building in. And we've made submittals for site plan review to the county, and that's where this issue became apparent, in that we still have the ingress-egress easement located on the southern property line, which really is a couple reasons it's a problem there. First of all, is it's an undeveloped area of the property that requires a buffer, a 40-foot buffer. And secondly, because from a practical perspective, access to the rear plan that was initiated back in 2005, 2006.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Irving, for your testimony. Does anybody have a question for Mr. Irving? I see no hands. Mr. Irving, thank you for your testimony today, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Ms. Workin, do we have any other person that wants to speak in favor of this application or in opposition?
No, we have no other speakers and there was no opposition.
Okay. All right. Any questions for staff? Board members, any questions of staff? Very good. At this time, this application is closed to the public. And at this time, we'd like to get a motion to either approve or deny this application. Do you have anyone that would like to make a motion to approve or deny? Mr. Borkins, you strike again.
I guess it's just my night. Okay. In the case of BZA-11-20-00-438, I move that we grant the applicant's request. In this case, I find, based upon staff's review and report, that it meets all 7 of the criteria. There are extraordinary exceptional conditions pertaining to this particular piece of property. In criteria 1, this is a property that was permitted. Buildings were built prior to prior restrictions, constraints on the property. Those have now changed. This request will now bring it in compliance with the variance in place. Criteria number 2, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. This is a commercial lot in an overlay district now that is trying to come in compliance with those new restrictions. So that is not something that happens all the time. So I find it meets criteria 2. Criteria 3, because of these conditions, the application of this ordinance to this particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. Again, 2 buildings were already constructed that were properly permitted. Now to bring those buildings in compliance, this variance is necessary. Also with the presentation of the applicant and his representative, along with the information from staff, this variance will also allow the ingress egress to be located in a way that makes sense and allows for the necessary utilization of the property by allowing the 3rd building to be built upon it. So I find it meets that criteria. Criteria 4, the authorization of the variance will not be a substantial detriment to the adjacent property or to public good, and the character in the zoning district will not be harmed by granting this variance. This is an industrial property located in overlay districts, and the buildings are used for that purpose. The additional building certainly fits on the property and would not change its character or cause any additional harm that would by its utilization. So I find it meets that criteria. The criteria 5, the Board of Zoning Appeals shall not grant a variance to the effect of which would be to allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted to the zoning district to extend physically or non-conforming use of land, or to change the zoning district boundaries shown on the official zoning map. The fact that the property may be utilized more properly should a variance be granted may not be considered these grounds for variance. Again, the use of the property is not changing. This variance allows it to come within compliance and further be utilized for the purpose it was intended. So it meets that criteria. Criteria 6, the need for the variance does not result in the applicant's own actions. Again, the buildings were built and were properly permitted at that time, and with the changes of the overlay district, the setbacks have changed, and this now creates a situation of bringing the property within compliance. That's not the result of the applicant's own actions. So it meets criteria 6. Criteria 7, granting the variance does not substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan or purposes of the ordinance. To the contrary, it's an industrial property allowed in the overlay zoning district as it has been used in the past. And so it absolutely does not conflict with that on that issue. I would offer this with staff's 2 conditions. 1, the applicant property owner shall complete the site review plan process And 2, prior to zoning permit approval, the applicant property owner shall record a plat that relocates the existing ingress egress, plat book, E as in Edward, H as in hotel, page 922, to the location shown on the site plan exhibit A.
Thank you, Mr. Boykin. Do we have a second? Mr. Nelson, thank you so very much. Ms. Working, at this time, could you please call the roll for the vote?
Yes. Mr. Ray?
Aye.
Ms. Allison?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Nelson?
Aye.
And Mr. Woodall? Mr. Woodall? I didn't hear you.
Aye.
Okay. So that's 5. It's unanimous approval with the 2 conditions.
Thank you, Ms. Working. Mr. Massenberg, congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
So within 10 business days, someone from staff will contact you, give you the information necessary for you to move forward in this process.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all your help.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty. And good night, sir.
Good night.
Board members, please hold tight. We still have some additional business that we need to take care of.
Okay. So our next meeting is February 1st at 5 o'clock. It is definitely going to be a virtual meeting. Right now we have 1 variance in. There's a possibility it could stay at 1 variance, but we also have a project that needs, it's 1 project, but it needs 2 special exceptions and maybe 4 variances, give or take. So it's possible those might be added, but if so, it would just be that 1 project. So it still shouldn't be super long. But if not, then if those don't make it in for February, they'll probably be on March. So I hope that answers any questions. There could be 1 through 7 cases for February.
Let's try to get it in on February.
But hopefully, no matter what, it should be fairly short. I don't have much to say about the continuing education yet. I haven't really looked at what's available, but for all my, all of you guys we just need to get your 3 hours done by the end of the year. And that can be done at any time, any place, and you just let me know. So I'll send reminders in the next couple weeks. And have Joyce, can you introduce Savannah?
Can you hear me, Jenny?
Yes.
Can you see me, Jenny?
Yes.
Okay. So guys, this is Savannah Marie. She's taken Edgar's spot. So she will be your new admin for BZA.
Congratulations, Savannah.
Welcome, Savannah.
Thank you.
And also Sally had her baby girl, Emma, right? On the 28th, December 28th. So,
yep.
And they're both doing very well. She's super cute. And lastly, before we get into Calvin's issue, because we didn't get a quorum for the December minutes, we'll move those to the February meeting. So we'll have the December minutes and the January minutes, February. So we just need Mr. Freeman to be there to get that quorum. That's all I have, Mr. Hughie.
So good evening, everyone. I just wanted to give an update and get some feedback. So a contempt action was filed against the boats concerning their presentation before the board. I am currently in negotiations with their attorney, Brandon Gaskins. There was another action that was filed, which I'm not working on, but has been settled with the boats for a monetary amount. I need to speak with Katie, who is one of the attorneys for the county, to see what the actual final settlement was. I am interested in understanding if there's anything specific the board is seeking in terms of trying to negotiate a settlement. The case is, we've continued the case. It was going to be heard last month or earlier, I'm sorry, last month, really more as a status conference. This is a little unique in that I'm not sure this issue has been presented, at least from the BZA, at least since I've been on the BZA or been the attorney for the BZA. We've never had to present a case like this before, so I really have no reference point as to what a judge might rule in a case like this. It could be monetary, you know, it could be some type of other, well, obviously a civil penalty. And so I'm just trying to get some input from the board, if there is any. You know, if not, we can move forward. It's my goal, hopefully, to resolve this through mediation, through negotiations, rather than having to put up a whole trial, which it feels like it's not necessary. But I wanted to see if any of the board members wanted to give me any comments about their thoughts.
If I may, Mr. Hugie, it seems like we're going on new territory, especially for Charleston County, just like you stated. And I've been on this board just as long as you have, sir. And never have we had anybody, in contempt for purging themselves. And I think at this time, we really need to make a point to see that there is some penalty involved for their actions. If not, it just leaves the gate open for somebody else to come forward and just to say whatever they want and not have any penalty in doing so. So I think whatever actions that needs to take place, we need to do it, so that we can set a good precedent going forward to maintain the integrity of this entire board and what it stands for Charleston County.
Well, I completely agree. I think the issue is in terms of settling it rather than going through the process of a trial. Either way, there would be some penalty, if you will. They would have to agree to something to resolve this issue.
I think Mr. Borkin has something he wants to say.
Mr. Hugie, I agree with all the comments so far. A couple of things. I think certainly the resolution of this case should involve some acknowledgement or admission on the Bolt's behalf that they agree that they presented information that was false, knowingly false. They don't have to get into specifics, but whether it be in writing or orally or testimony, there should be an acknowledgement on their part that it was overwhelming that with the evidence presented that they made an intentional act to present false information to the board. So I would put that up first. The second part of it, and I'll see what the other board members have to say or their feelings, but I think whatever penalty should be tied to the fruit of their acts. And I guess in that regard, I feel like it doesn't necessarily have to be a monetary penalty or anything like that. But I think if we look back at the genesis of this, the board, had it been presented with truthful information regarding to their intent and purposes for asking for the variance to construct these tree houses and their intended use of those tree houses, the board may not have granted those variances, and they would not have been constructed, and then they would not have been able to employ them as they did. I don't know if maybe some time frame might be put forward that restricts any rental of those units for whatever period of time the board might think is reasonable, or some restriction for rental on them as long as they're in their ownership. I don't know. I feel like that maybe the proper resolution should be tied to the results of their actions.
So one of the issues that has come up is their initial offer was to not allow short-term rentals. They actually currently do not have a short-term rental license because it's been revoked by the board. They're in the site plan review process, which they have not completed. However, under the new ordinance, if they were to apply for short-term rentals, they would have to subdivide the property. The issue is whether or not they're actually going to go forward subdividing the property, as well as the fact that they have the property up for sale. It's not clear whether or not it will sell as is, or will they subdivide it and sell it. And even if they subdivide it, will they request a short-term rental application? Because they would have to come back before the board to in fact get that. And so one of the things that they offered, that has been offered, is to not apply for a short-term rental license for a year. But that's really speculative based on what happens in the future. So I understand what you're saying, and I actually agree with you. However, it's going to be difficult to tie that to short-term rental income, because right now they're not getting short-term rental income. And it's unclear whether or not they will be applying to put themselves in a position in the future to get short-term rental income. And also, I apologize. Usually in negotiations, no party actually admits fault, if you will. It's more of, we agreed to do this. Additionally, in this particular instance, usually you want that to benefit one party in the future. That would not be necessary in a situation such as this.
One comment I would make, and I don't know if this is something that could be constructed or enforced, is, and I'm only speaking for myself, is that the way this all came to be was certainly nefarious as far as them presenting the false information. What I would like to see is that this property not continue in this situation, so that if they were to sell the property, someone else could step in and utilize what they obtained wrongfully based on their contemptuous actions. And then we're right back in this same situation, but the future owners had no part into how it got to be the way it was. So is there some zoning remedy or something that could be put on that particular piece of property to restrict the future use of those dwelling units as it applies to short-term rental as part of this agreement? Or I think that would allay the concerns of the community, because I think they feel like they were wronged in the sense that this went as far as it did, especially down in the Wadmalaw community, because they're very active down there. But I think that would be the best resolution if that was something that could be met through an agreement, that the do-over in this is to restrict the rental portion of those dwelling units in some way or fashion. If they could agree to some of permanent restriction, I think that would be amenable, but I don't know if that can be obtained.
Well, I know currently they do not have a short-term rental license. So because they don't have a short-term rental license, that's not something that they could convey. I would need to speak with Jenny and probably look at the statute. I think they currently have the ability to do long-term rentals. And so I guess the question is, would you want to limit anyone, if the property is sold, the ability of anyone else to use the long-term rental, because any other party would have to apply for short-term rental. And again, the property would have to be subdivided.
Well, what I would say is two things. First, that they would agree not to do the short-term rentals for 1 year is, I hate to use the word insulting, but they were going to lose that anyway for their conduct by exceeding the allowable nights and everything. So that was yet a punishment for another offense, not this offense.
Correct.
If they would agree to, say, a restrictive covenants placed on the property prior to it being sold to someone else, maybe that might be agreeable. No, I don't think anyone has any objection to their long-term rental of the property as a private property right. That certainly I don't think would upset anyone. I think it's just the nature of the short-term rental, and that apparently was the motivation all along, and that they failed to disclose it. But those are my thoughts, and I'll leave it to the rest of the board.
Can you clarify to me in terms of the covenant you're referring to? Because the covenant would be binding on, obviously be binding on them currently, but it would also be binding on future owners.
Yes, and that was my intent, is that not allow a non-conforming property. I mean, it was conforming, but I guess it was not obtained honestly or through, they committed a contemptible act to secure a variance that they may not have otherwise have had in the first place. I think that variance to build those units should be penalized, not tear them down or not allow them to be used or owned in the future under any other circumstances. But I think the fly in the ointment is the short-term or extended home rentals that may be allowed to gotten, an end around that other folks won't be entitled to that. I don't think they should be allowed to benefit from obtaining something under false pretenses. And I agree with our chairman that I think that type of resolution will show this board is serious about, requiring honest and truthful testimony. And I think that might be the fair punishment, that you didn't get it honestly and rightfully. And that would penalize the very thing that they were trying to obtain. That's the best I can put as far as a sense of justice.
So, and I want to understand the application of that. So, because currently they're renting the property under long-term rental, right? So are you saying to restrict that, the current?
Well, I'm saying to allow the long-term rental, because that is a normal thing. I think this whole thing with them doing the resort and all that, all goes to short-term rentals, as we know. So I'm fine with long-term rentals, have no objection on that. I think if we can just eliminate short-term rentals, if they would agree to do that, I think, not that I'm trying to be an advocate per se for the folks on Wamalaw, but I heard that loud and clear when they were speaking to us. And I think that's their primary thing to be upset about. And I think if that could be resolved, that property would be so restricted for just that one issue, which is what they benefited from in their false presentations of this board. I think that's trying to put a fine line and a very narrow in scope enforcement or punishment for the act, in my opinion.
So would you or the board be comfortable with if they agreed to not seek a short-term rental license, even if they subdivide the property and otherwise would be eligible under the new ordinance, but they simply give up that ability, and it's binding on them? Not future owners can apply and they'd have to go through the process, but not the current owners of boats.
I would be fine for that. And again, the caveat is that future owners would have to go through the process after it was subdivided. I think that's fair. And then, those folks that would object to it are welcome to come and participate in the process and speak up and be heard. I think that might be a fair resolution. Yes, sir.
Okay. Does any of the other members of the board have a position or would like some input?
I want to rejoice that. I mean, and Mr. Ray. I mean, they. I just go back to, they just walked in there and just completely, lied of what they were going to do.
Sure. I think one of the issues for the board, and it's very difficult because by the time the board learns or gets information that someone has lied, it's usually after the fact. This is the first time, because and Mr. Woodall, you were on the board, not sure who else was on the board, but the time when the mayor of Mount Pleasant came before the board. But other than that time, I'm not sure that someone has presented information in such a way that we found out. Because usually due the course of, what I'm going to call cross-examination or questioning, becomes clear and someone's usually can correct statements. This is probably, other than the mayor of Mount Pleasant at the time, the most egregious, at least in terms of my tenure as an attorney for the board, that something's been, clearly this egregious. So, I can say to you, Mr. Boykin, and to the newer board members, this is really new territory for the board. And so, as long as you are comfortable with my drafting or creating a settlement whereby they're giving up something that they may never even apply for, but they're actually giving it up, you know, I'm very comfortable with moving forward.
I agree with that, Mr. Hughie. I think that's a very good start, and we can just see where we can go from that point. I think that's enough punishment for this application.
Mr. UG, if I may, could I only make one request, and maybe you already intend to do this? Might we have an opportunity to review and comment or consult with you once that's drafted before you formally submit it? Okay, that's all I have. Thanks. Okay.
Yeah, I just, what it is, we're scheduled to go to court, I believe, the 25th of this month. And so to the degree that I, you know, can reach back to Attorney Gaskins, come up with, based on this conversation, come up with a solution, which is very similar, but, you know, add in comments and suggestions and this.
If I might add one other thing, Mr. UG, I'm sorry. I just, in your construction of the language of this document, I think it needs also to contain some parameters as far as that it's not only that they are barred from ownership, they can't have nominee ownership. In other words, you get where I'm going with this, that they can't create an LLC they have ownership or interest in, or it's another family member.
Right.
And end around the agreement by saying, well, hey, we're not the owners. So however that needs to be legally constructed, I would put that forward.
Okay. So what I will do is I work on a draft and get comments from Attorney Gaskins. If it's okay, I will probably get it to Jenny so she can circulate it among the board and make sure before anything is signed off on that the board is in agreement with the language. Okay. Is everyone in agreement with that?
I think so. Everybody, Mr. Woodall, Mr. Nelson, Mr. Boykin, Ms. Allison, thumbs up or thumbs down? Thumbs up, Ms. Allison. So
okay.
You have,
I can only see it. I can only see Mr. Woodall.
Well, everybody's in agreement, Mr. Hughes.
Okay. All right.
Can I ask a question though? I support everything Mr. Boykin has put forward in this, but I'm just curious, Mr. Hughie, you mentioned that the site is for sale, and I'm curious, and you're talking about subdivisions and other things that are possible on this tract. How many lots could they subdivide this particular tract into?
Well, what I'm aware of is if they were to apply for short-term rentals, there would have to be at least 2 tracts, because you can't get the short-term rental on both properties on one lot. So I'm assuming they would be subdividing into one lot, but as I understand it, and I spoke with Joel Evans earlier, they have not completed that process. They started the site plan review for the subdivision process, but it hasn't been completed. I don't know if that's just because of the holidays. And it's just through conversation with Attorney Gaskins that I understand that it's either up for sale or they may be putting up for sale. I think from what he said to me, they plan on relocating to North Carolina. So there are a lot of possibilities. I can't tell you factually where things are.
Okay. I'm just curious, if the site is zone whatever, AG8 or whatever, and it could be zone subdivided into 8 lots, I believe, something like that.
It's AG 15.
It's AG okay.
15.
AG 15.
So it's more restrictive. Probably only 4, possibly.
Ross, the only other thing I'll throw into you, and Jenny can expound upon it, is there is a provision in the Zelders for a conservation subdivision, so they can get more if they go that route.
Well, I guess one of the things that I would encourage the county to put forward to them, I don't know if they would ever accept this, and I think it would probably overstep what we should require as a board. But knowing the folks at Wadmalaw, the thing that would make them happier than anything else on Wadmalaw Island is to see the property preserved and a conservation easement be placed on the property. And I would go so far as to say if the Bolts were willing to place an easement on the property, that at that point, we kind of, that would be a win-win situation for a lot of people in this. And I think the board at that point would be, we should entertain backing down off of other requirements on the property.
Mr. Nelson, if you got an easement, that would just take everything away from them. I mean, that would be harsh.
Well, I realize it would be hard. That's why I'd say that it would have to come from them, but I do think that it would alleviate a lot of the angst that they feel with the residents on Wamala Island.
I do concur with you on that, sir.
I think there may be an issue in terms, obviously you can put a conservation easement on the property, but the way this property is designed, it would be very interesting, like where would you place the conservation easement? Because most of where the development of the property is on the back end of the property. So you might have a situation where there's a conservation easement, just part of their lot, but it's not connected to the other existing lots. And the other existing lots all the development seems to be on the back end of these properties.
Mm-hmm.
So you might have, that may be kind of odd.
Mr. Ray, if I may, I'll throw this out. Conservation easements are very subjective. They can be extremely restrictive or not at all restrictive, and they're very specific. The other thing is, I think most of us would agree that the outrage or the anger, especially down on Wamala, is that, you know, that type of rental, they see it as a resort, or it's not commercial. We all know that it's not, but it's something that was not otherwise allowed for anyone else in the AG 15 subdivision at that time. And I think the sense of fairness or justice, I guess, for them probably lies all about the employment of the property as a, you know, extended home rental and that type of thing. But that's just my opinion of what I've heard, and you know, seems like what rang true to most of them that spoke.
Yeah, I would endorse that, because I received several phone calls where the question was, what is the difference between this and a hotel? From the members of the community, they really basically felt like they're just running a hotel. So I believe the community would be happy with kind of the initial discussions about their inability to basically just rent out, as much as they want, as often as they want.
Right.
Well, and I guess I'll add to that, it's kind of like, somebody getting to keep the booty, so to speak, or the loot from their, misconduct. And if they get to continue to do the one thing they weren't allowed to do in the way they received it, that no one else was allowed to do it that way. I think, again, I go back to, I think that the quote punishment or the redress of this should be narrowly focused on what they benefit or what they received for what they did. And I think that would be the most effective statement on our part as a board to make.
Okay.
I agree.
That's very helpful. I appreciate all the input.
The only thing to clear up, Boykin, you mentioned conservation subdivision in Zeldar. Those are allowed, but only in RR3 and AG8.
Are you sure on that? Because
I looked it up.
Okay, so has that always been that way?
It's in Chapter 8.
Okay, so just AG,
Yeah.
AG8
and RR3.
Thank you.
I was not sure, but I looked it up.
Thank you. So all the other like 8. Okay, so you said AGR and AG8.
No, RR3.
Okay.
And AG8.
Thank you. Okay, so AG10, AG15 cannot benefit from a subdivision. But here's my question. All right, so not to try and change the subject, the McLeod Roads property that just went through the subdivision, that was a conservation subdivision. It was, what was it zoned? Was it not?
RR3.
Thank you. My mistake. I thought it was an ag property. Thank you. All right, RR3. Gotcha.
Yeah, AG15 is pretty restrictive.
Nope. Thank you.
Already.
I stand corrected. Thank you.
Good job, Mr. Boykin. All right, Mr. Hughes, are you
Yes.
good now?
Yes, thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Working, do we have anything else for this august body?
Nope, we don't. We should have 3 new members in next month. So.
Fantastic. Well, I want to personally thank everybody for coming tonight and putting your best foot forward for another year. I appreciate it, and I know staff does. Staff, you've done a fantastic job once again. Bravo.
Thank you.
So with that being said, at this time, I'd like to close the meeting. The meeting is adjourned.
Good evening, all.